Hi, Scott from Digital Fish with content that catches and a walk down memory lane with a trip to the wharf where I learnt how to fish. Yep, that's me fishing with a hand line at Pilot Bay Wharf, Mt Maunganui. I spent almost every holiday on that wharf, pretty much all day by myself. I learnt to fish and saw lots of cool things while I was there. It doesn't look like much, but everything from red moki to kingfish to crayfish have been encountered here, not to mention stingrays, John Dory and stargazers. When the spinning craze came out in the 80s, this is where I cut my teeth. That's a solid 3 kg KAHAWAI. The tide constantly moving past brought all kinds of species if you were patient enough, and the kids' eyes would pop out when they saw a decent KAHAWAI brought on board. They'd always say, "I never knew you could catch fish that big here." This morning was pretty. Instead of an old Ticer lure, I had a stickbait instead. This wharf is the only place I've seen a kingfish jump fully out of the water. It was in hot pursuit of a blue cod someone had pulled up, and it cartwheeled with a big splash back into the water. I've seen a school of kingfish swim past, and one day a huge school of big sprats were jumping out of the water all at once. The sound was deafening, like someone had dumped 10 tons of gravel into the ocean as one large kingfish pursued them all. Up until the 90s, you could always find a big school of yellow-eyed mullets swimming in front of the wharf with a school of mackerel under them, but they eventually disappeared over time. I usually caught KAHAWAI spinning on 3 or 4 kg mono, but I've caught parodi, snapper, jack mackerel, blue mackerel and trevally here on lures as well. My first day's fishing was somewhere around 1974. Some guy with a surf caster caught a nice snapper and big parodi onto a tour bait. The wharf used to have a harbour master's hut on the end that was locked and there wasn't any railing. One day my car keys fell over the side and I was lucky enough to drag a lure along the bottom and I hooked them in 3 metres of murky water. I was pretty happy about that. I didn't feel like going for a swim as it was August. One stormy day I hooked a really strong fish right on the drop. It took me 20 minutes to land it, probably still my biggest trevally. I played it very carefully as I was pretty sure it wasn't a KAHAWAI, and when I gaffed it and pulled it onto the wharf, I tweaked the lure and it came out. One of my most memorable catches here. My cousin, Craig Cushman, would come fishing as well when he was old enough. He's just as nuts as I'm about fishing. We'd fish all day and complain 10 hours later when we had to go home. Commercial boats would regularly come in. They felt like a nuisance, but they have to earn a living too, so you just had to be patient. The commercial cray boats would sometimes sell crayfish off the back of the boat for $5 a piece. I'd caught a baby cray amongst the rocks one day and asked the skipper if he would swap my crayfish for one of his. It must have been a good day's fishing for him, because he did. My grandmother was pretty happy about that. I switched to a soft bait and briefly hooked up onto a small snapper, but it let go. I had a few hours free that morning and it was time to go home after a quick stroll around the mount. Great memories of a great little wharf. This is Scott from Digital Fish with content that catches.